Welcome to the Hyper Voice. I'm your host, Stephen Morioka, and today I'm joined by Alex Underhill.
Alola, Stephen.
And Collin Heier.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hey guys, this is a show all about Pokemon's Video Game Championship Series, also known as VGC for short. And today we have our third in the world, Collin here, and former third in the world, rather. But yeah, today we're going to be talking about a lot of national, international events that have happened over the past few weeks. We've missed a lot, so we're going to try and do a lot of coverage, hopefully, in this episode. But let's start off with not the most recent event, but the earliest event since we've put a show out, and that is Japan Nationals. This is what we're going to start with. We know everyone wants to hear about Indy and all the good stuff that happened there, but we're just going to quickly go over Japan Nationals, the top teams from there. Maybe if we have any more information about it, we'll sort through that. But that happened. That was mid-June, that weekend, 17th and 18th. And we saw some interesting teams come out of there, I think. And just, if you guys have any more information on how the tournament went, I know there are videos and there was a stream of it that people can catch up on. But just any opinions on the teams, on the event itself?
Well, from what I remember, I believe the team or the event was run best of one, and I think they did it Swiss this year, if I hear correctly. I think like last year and previous years they've done pools, but in this year I think they did Swiss, which is not totally typical for them, but it was still best of one. And so, that's typical fun Japan stuff where, you see crazy teams make it to the top because they have to innovate to be able to make it through these preliminary rounds. And so we saw a lot of teams that stand out make it into the cut. And I think once they got into the cut, I think it was still best of one for a portion of it. And I think they only played like a best of three in like the finals or maybe in top four. But I don't know when exactly.
It was just finals was the only games that were best of three were the finals for all the divisions. So juniors, seniors, and masters were all best of one until the final set.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, that's just so weird for them having to play best of one for pretty much their entire season to qualify and then at nationals until that finals, and then all of a sudden Worlds comes around for them at least and it's all best of three. So it must be somewhat radical change for them unless they practice it in their groups and stuff in their local tournaments. But what's interesting to me is, I may be wrong about this, but I don't really recognize any of these names as, kind of the big Japanese players. Am I right about that? Or am I just...
I think you're mostly right, but the guy who won, he had actually placed, I believe, second last year, and maybe even second the year before. So he's been kind of a bigger name in Japan, but he hasn't had too much success at like a Worlds level. But outside of that, there weren't many names that I recognized either.
Yeah, I just would not be the guy to ask, but I just think that in general, it's kind of just cool how I feel like they're moving in the right direction, adding Swiss to their tournaments as opposed to pools, and maybe as that progresses, maybe they'll start moving more and more towards a typical circuit like we see in like Europe or America. And so I'm hoping that things will turn around for them because I personally am not a big fan of the best of one system that they do, but who knows, maybe that's really what they're into, considering that it is what they play for most of the season, like Steven said.
Yeah, I think for the most part they've just come to accept it as that's what they have to deal with for now. And I agree Swiss is probably better than pools for them. Other than that, though, some really kind of neat stuff in cut here. You have a rain team, the Pelipper Golduck Double Ducks team with its arena featured on that team. I see tons of Tapu Bulu, Buzzwole, like a choice band Lycanroc, and then there's that Porygon Z team that was also featured at the North American International with a few players there using it. But a lot of cool stuff here.
Not to mention that that Lycanroc team was on a dual weather team with Ninetales as well, and I believe the Ninetales had Swagger. Not even with like Misty terrain or anything, just like classic like Gen 6 Swagger. Like, let's just run Swagger just to confuse things.
That is pretty cool, I'd say.
Oh, something else that I think is worth mentioning is another. They did this last year at Japan Nationals, but something that's worth mentioning because you don't see it like it's not the same over here. The teams were released before cut was played, and so they kind of already like knew what everybody was doing going into those top cut matches, and we kind of have something similar to that here in America, where like you could go back and watch stream to figure out what people are using on day two, or in this case, we had top four played on the final day of nationals, and so you could definitely scout out your top four opponent, considering all those games were streamed, as well as the person you could potentially play in finals, because those I believe the teams were released at that point, but once again in Japan they had the teams fully released, printed out in like fancy poster boards posted on the wall so that everyone could see them, and that's just so different compared to what we see here.
Yeah, what it's also kind of neat to point out is that a lot of these teams do look best of one, which kind of explains why they had a lot of success at this tournament. And, obviously you want to have a good team that would function both in a best of one and a best of three, but for these Japanese players specifically, they needed to really come out on top with single game wins like that. And a lot of these teams, really have those techniques and kind of, unique picks to do that. So, a lot of standout Pokemon here, a lot of weird things I'd say, and then stuff that, kind of typical. There's a lot of Coco. We talked a lot about the band team. That is the Tapu Bulu, or Bulu, Arcanine, and Nihilego. Yeah, you see that placing there in the top 8. And then a lot of just other staples, really. And then those weird picks. I know there's information available about all these teams, their movesets and items and natures, I believe. That is available. I found it on a Pastebin. I don't know where else I could find that. But it's out there if you want to find out what these teams are actually using.
Yep, and just one more thing to mention, I guess, before we move on is that, like Steven has said, the ban core or Bulu Arcanine Nihilego did see a lot of use there, and I thought that was really interesting because it did follow up Drew's Ace Noack or Drew Noack, his win at Madison Regionals with that core, and we just saw a lot more of it there. So I don't know if that was more of just like a coincidence or kind of thing, but it's kind of interesting to see that meta trend.
I think that was definitely like up and coming at the time.
Yeah.
And I think for nationals, people were much more prepared for it because of how much success it was having. So I think it makes sense that I think Japan Nats was like the peak time to like pull it off, because I think for our national it was a little bit on the weaker side than it was there. But overall, the Japanese teams, they're pretty much what we kind of expect. Like a lot of best of one. There was a lot of consistency behind them, but I know a lot of people on Twitter wrote them off as very gimmicky or just kind of like, oh, Japan's behind or they're not very good right now. But I think like there's a lot of like careful team building in there, and usually they do have that disadvantage of playing best of one, and then they come to the World Championships and it's all best of 3, so that there's huge disadvantage. And I know it's hurt them in the past, like most notably I think like 2012, 2013-ish, they struggled to kind of adapt. I remember reading it in I think is it Udachi? The person who got top 8 in 2012, he wrote about struggling with best of 3 because he'd never played it before. He just played best of 1, so
2016, didn't they struggle a lot as well?
Yeah, they struggled a lot, but I think I'm not sure why they necessarily struggled as much there, but like 2013, I know, like he had success, but he did struggle with best of 3. I think they were just behind in 2016.
Yeah, I gotcha. Because then you think about the one outlier year that was such a huge outlier, 2015, that everyone likes to point to because like Japan just kind of swept us all there, and so that was just really interesting considering that was a best of 3 tournament. So
they've definitely got 2016 doesn't really show that they've gotten better at the best of 3 stuff, but they've been getting much better like overall, like playing best of 3s. I think they might just practice them more, knowing they're going to Worlds, and there's more of them going to Worlds, so they have more people to potentially practice best of threes with.
Yeah, something else interesting to point about that could be a possible coincidence with 2015 is they had that weird open invitation to Japanese players. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
you're
I
right.
remember
That's
that
right.
one.
I don't know if that's like a related incidence or not, like, or if it's just totally coincidental, but like it's kind of funny that the year that Japan dominated was the year that they had open participation on day one.
Well, yeah, when you have a world structure like that for them, that's gonna be a bonus.
Exactly, it's totally not what you're used to for them, at least.
Yeah, but really quick here, this one thing you mentioned there is that they're not really accustomed to playing best of threes. You know, it's one thing, and that's very true for their case. But what really stands out here is you can only do so much with practice among friends and just other people with best of threes. It's so much different in practice than it is in an actual tournament setting.
Sure.
You know, I don't really know if I have to explain more than that, but it's very different. You know, you're going to be playing in person, not necessarily online. In person, it's going to be a long day, long tournament. You're going to be playing several matches throughout the day, so very different setting for them.
Stakes are high.
Yes, and I think the only thing I just wanted to mention here really quickly is we are looking at the teams from Japan and from the Japan National and the North American International on TrainerTower.com, so you can pull those up if you'd like to follow along with the teams we were talking about. I should have mentioned that earlier, but it was Ryota Otsubo who came out on top with that Rain team, and I think that's pretty much all we need to say about Japan Nationals, other than I believe we're going to have around 50 of them who have qualified to Worlds, because everyone who qualified in Japan Cup or to the National through Japan Cup is also qualified for Worlds. So, to the best of our knowledge, I believe that is correct. So, so hopefully they'll have a strong showing at Worlds in terms of attendance.
And they couldn't get more invites from their national, considering Japan Cup was the pool for Japan National invites. So it's not like the number of invites that were earned from Japan Cup could have gotten any larger, interestingly enough.
It all depends, really, if they decide to fly over. So, some of them, I know, like, Vieira, he has an invite, but he didn't perform as well. And then, I'm trying to remember if there are any, like, big notable names that people would know of that qualified, but I don't remember if there were some that didn't go to nationals but qualified.
Gotcha.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, sometimes it can be tough to follow their entire circuit, and especially in these last 2-3 months they have it. But anyway, let's move on from here, from Japan, and talk about what I'm sure everyone else wants to hear about, and that is Indianapolis. Big tournament. I guess not that big, but roughly same size as the nationals we've had in the past. And we have Collin on here, who is someone who had not qualified prior to this tournament at the international, needed to do well at this thing to get his invite. You did that, and you had a struggle in the beginning, so just tell us about that. Tell us about your run here.
Okay, so I think my run really started in Madison, because I just gotten top 8 at Seattle, and then I go to Madison, and I was, really struggling there. So I ended up, I think, X and 3, so I didn't get the result I wanted to. And then I went to an Illinois mid-season showdown, where, once again, I wasn't able to perform. And then I also went to Ohio for that special event, and I didn't perform there either. I actually went to 3 PCs and the special event and didn't get any CP. So I wanted to set myself up so I'd need top 16, or not top 16, top 64 at Nationals to get my invite. But instead, I needed top 32 now because I hadn't gotten any CP in a month. So I was really doubting myself, going into Nationals. And then Conan had this team that we had all prepared, so we had our team ready to go a week before the event, and we were practicing and working with each other. And Conan, Michael Anzano, and we watched some inspirational movies together on Skype. We were talking to each other every day, trying to we'd play on BattleSpot, and one of us would stream it, and we'd watch the other one play to see how they were playing with the team. And then So I wasn't feeling too confident, and Michael actually told me to use my Dallas team because that was the team I had the most success with in the format, but I was pretty committed to Conan's team. And then I went to the event, I was feeling really good, and round one, I misplayed a little bit game one. I was like, okay, no big deal. Game two, I fix myself up, win. Game three, I get like a unlucky flinch in the beginning of the game, but it doesn't really matter too much. Like, I played it out, and then I needed to hit move for 2 turns with my Garchomp, but he was flinched. So I ended up losing round one, and I was like a little mad because I got a little unlucky, but there were some places where I could have played it better. And then I was like, okay, no big deal. We get 2 losses, I can easily adjust. And then round two, I played Gary, Kwan,
Or Chan.
who
Yeah.
Gary Chan, yeah. And game one, I won pretty convincingly. In game two, I got Rock Slide flinched from the Flygon this time on my Porygon. And I was like, okay. And then game three, I couldn't handle his Pheromosa, so I lost that one. And I was sitting at 0-2, and I'd done it before in 2015. I started out 1-2, and then won 6 in a row to make cut. But I didn't have the pressure of making Worlds because I'd earned my invite from the previous year at Worlds. So this year I was a little nervous, and I called my friend Oliver, and he was just telling me about this run Mango, the Smash player, had, because I like Smash. And there's this run where he actually had to play his friend round one. They messed around with some Link Dittos in Melee, and then Mango ended up losing, and he had to make his run through losers bracket, and he beat everybody in the tournament to like make it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna be Mango today. I'm gonna win 7 in a row to make cut. So it started off pretty, like, starting out at 0-2, the players are definitely going to be a little upset and a little off because they are 0-2. So I was able to like capture my momentum again, and I started building it up. And I avoided a lot of the good players because most of them were X and O or X and 1 at this point for most of the tournament. But I managed to make it to the second last round of Swiss, so I needed to win 2 more. And I drew Alberto. And it was a little intimidating because I haven't beaten Alberto this year, and he just eliminated me from Seattle a month ago. So I didn't want to like get eliminated from Nats by the same player and the same team. But I was able to power through it and beat Alberto.
That game was on stream, right?
And, yeah, the third game was on stream because they were streaming Michael versus Trista, the rematch from Worlds.
Oh, yes, of course.
So game 3, I got to be on stream, and then I was able to beat Alberto. And then like the whole time, like Michael and Conan kept me going. And actually on the stream, you can see me. I like look into the audience because I see Michael and Conan are there, and I like mouth the words like, "Did you win?" And once they tell me I won, I like give them a little pop off on stream because I'm just so happy that both of them won. And then we met I mentioned it in the interview as well afterward. Because like the whole day we were just cheering, like keeping each other going. Just like the 3 of us, like, because we're like a little bit of a team, so we weren't playing like, it felt like we were actually playing a team game, even though it was a single person game. But the whole day we were just cheering each other on. And then the final round, I played Jonathan Evans. I got lucky game 1 with a freeze, and after that he didn't adjust as well as I did for game 2, and then I was able to 2-0 him. And then I saw myself sitting at 7-2, and as long as I didn't mess up day 2 too poorly, I would have an invite to Worlds again, which is what I was aiming for. But more importantly, Conan and Michael were able to make it to day 2 as well, and we dodged each other the whole time. So we got pretty lucky in that regard. And then we got to watch Conan win too. And like on stream, he got all excited when he saw that both of us had made it to day 2 as well.
I remember seeing that like even though I was at the event in person, I remember seeing it on the stream. You could see Conan like being really excited before he even like finished his set. And like, I imagine it for the people who didn't understand what was going on, they were really confused. But like, I see him looking at you guys and I'm like, I know exactly what's going on. But yeah, it's really funny that all 3 of you were able to make it to the day 2 with the same team. Like, honestly, I'm here looking at the results, and just in the like span of my webpage, you can see like all 3 of them with the same team. Like, Michael at 16th, Conan at 18th, and Collin at 20th. So, and they're all just using that one team. Obviously, it made a big impact. It was a really strong call because it made all three of you make it to the day two.
For sure. It was something like, because for the entire season, we've only changed about 2 Pokemon per tournament. Obviously, this is a lot different than the Tapu Fini Vikavolt team that we started with, but it's still like, it kind of moved back towards it in a way, but between each tournament, we've only changed 2 Pokemon, so it's something Conan and I were comfortable with because we've been competing all year, but Michael has been practicing on the side, and he had been using variants of our teams as well.
Nice. Yeah, I understand Michael doesn't attend as many events as I'm sure everyone else would like him to, but still showing very good player with a strong performance here. And I just wanted to point out, I just wanted to point out that you guys, strong group of friends there with the same team. And did it help you, going on that big win streak? Did it help you as you kept winning and your friends kept winning? Did that help build your confidence throughout the day?
Definitely, for sure. Because like after every round, they would be the first people I'd go to, like, because I wanted to know if they won. Because I wanted them to cut. I wanted Michael to win the tournament so he'd get Worlds. I wanted Conan to get day 2, and I wanted to make Worlds. So I was cheering for all of us almost equally. Like, if not, maybe even more than myself. Like, it's kind of weird playing like a game like this where you have to be so focused to yourself, and I definitely have been in past years, but this was the first tournament that I actually felt like I was playing not just for me. Like, I was playing for the 3 of us to do well. Like, because we're a team, we consider ourselves Team Japan, so we were definitely like cheering each other on, and it's a weird feeling to like play as a team like that.
Yeah, I can definitely understand it. There are certainly other groups out there that I'm sure have similar feelings towards one another in their groups of friends there. But kind of the story of the tournament here is really, first off, North America did not defend its international. So
in the worst way, like the worst, we got swept.
That's true. Like, yeah, we didn't even point this out in the beginning, is that every division was won by Oceania, and that was Australia, to be even more specific. And yeah, that was rough.
Like, at least Ashton won Brazil so that America had a international one, but like to not win our own just feels insulting, and it's kind of silly to like take it so personally. But like, I was really rooting for Paul in the end because I was like, we can't get swept, especially after watching Oceania win 2 finals in a row. I was like, this can't actually happen. Like, and that was actually the story of the weekend, is that Australia won all 3 divisions.
Yeah, and it wasn't even Australia just winning against other players. They all beat US players as well. So we had our chances in each division. And what I also want to point out here is kind of just this weird trend at specifically our international, or our former national and this current international. And I looked through all the previous top cuts since we've had a day 1, day 2 Swiss system. And of the possible, let's see, 16... Sorry, guys. 38. Out of the 38 possible top cut spots over the last 4 years at this level of tournament for the US, at least, or in North America, there have been 38 different people. There's not a single person who has, put up consistent performances at, top cutting these events into the bracket stage. But what's neat to point out about that is these events always have that wild card player coming in and doing really well. I think the best example from this tournament was Sean Bannon, who,
of course, yeah.
I don't think not many players knew about him, has this stellar performance, finishing in the top 4. And I think now he might beat, Alex, your own record of getting a really good spot at Nationals and no Worlds.
He did get top 4, no Worlds. Absolutely ridiculous. And I think that just kind of like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people had a lot of gripes towards this because you shouldn't be able to get so far at the national level tournament internationals, which we have 4 of them across the whole year, all over the world, and not be able to go to Worlds, not be able to get an invite, because I definitely think he was a player that deserved it just for this performance alone. But I don't know. It's really tough. Like I feel like a lot of people that I saw with their reactions, they felt like top eight was like the debatable spot. Like, should we give auto invites to top eight? But top four is one that I don't see a whole lot of debate on. I feel like the majority of people think that top four should be able to go to Worlds, and it's really rough to see that happen to Sean. I mean, obviously, if he had a more successful season, it could have been different, but just the CP scaling isn't the greatest at the international level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think like top eight people can argue, but top four, there's no question. Like that should be an invite. Like even if you have no CP, I think top four, it's hard to not say they deserve an invite.
It shouldn't come down to just a win.
Even for him, he might not have made Worlds even with second. So
yeah, exactly.
It's kind of it's really crazy because I know Michael needed first, and he got top 16, but he needed like first in the entire tournament. He couldn't even get second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, that's having to win a tournament to get Worlds. That's just a tall order for any person at all. You could be the best player in the world. That's gonna be a tall order.
Yeah, exactly. And like you had said, Steven, the consistency at nationals. I'm not sure how many years you pulled from 2015 or 14.
I've from 2014 onward.
Okay.
The last time we had a repeat performance from a top cut player was from Gavin winning in 2013 and then Gavin in top 8 in 2014. So
okay, but since 2014 there's been no repeats?
Right. The point I'm trying to make here is this is one of the craziest events we've had through the entirety of VGC, and how honestly the craziest things happen at these tournaments. You get all kinds of wildcard players placing really well, and then you have so many great stories coming out of all these tournaments every time. So, unfortunate for Sean in his specific case for this year. Really strong performance. He walks away with. Did top four walk away with trophies from this tournament?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, so he got a semifinalist trophy for that and no Worlds, which is kind of weird.
Mm-hmm. And $750. Also, something that we haven't mentioned yet, and it might look a little bit interesting when you're looking at the Trainer Tower results, is you'll see like the 9th and 10th place, they had an 11-3 record, but didn't earn any money, and so they essentially took the bottom 4 players of this top 10 cut that they ended up making and made them play for the 7th and 8th seed so that they could fight their way into a top 8 bracket. And I think that was kind of similar to how it was done last year.
Yeah, it was the exact same.
Okay.
Not the same number, but like they had anyone who went X and 2 on day 2, it was X and 2.
X and 3 across the whole tournament.
Yeah, X and 3 for this time. But last year their records didn't carry over, so it was just X and 2, you made cut, and some people had to play in.
So it's really tough for me to speak on this since I would really want to experience it to be able to speak on it. But Collin, what is your opinion on records carrying over since it was something you got to participate in, making it into the second day of nationals?
Well, personally, I wouldn't say heavily against it. I'm not going to argue with people, but I disagree with it just because for me, if we were playing Smash or another fighting game, it would make sense because it's all skill. But Pokemon has some luck, and I think having the X and 2 system that accounts for that is really nice because okay, I get 2 losses to luck, and then if I win 7 games, I still get to make it. So that's how I kind of view it.
Yeah.
The records can't I do like the idea of rewarding the person who goes 9-0 instead of, I believe last year, I think Andy Himes went 9-0 and he didn't get rewarded for it, but that's because once people were 7-0, they just stopped playing or they just showed up and said, "Hey, do you want the win? I don't care."
Exactly. Yes, and it happens.
It makes the last 2 rounds mean something to those players, but for me, it really hurt me into going into day 2 because I started out 7-2, much like all the other Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to win all but 1 round, and that's pretty tall order to ask against all these people who are in day 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I lost to Nails and Michael Lanzano. So I finally pulled one of them, and Michael beat me, and I lost to Nails. So my losses really didn't feel they were deserved, and I felt like they were too good players to lose to, but it knocked me out of the tournament entirely. So even before this, I didn't necessarily like the records carrying over just because of how luck-based Pokemon is.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand the like for it because you do get rewarded for doing stellar on day one, which is not something to push off or anything. Like, it's hard to go 9-0.
Exactly. It's tough because you do want to reward those players. You don't want to make those last rounds meaningless, as you said. You want people to put their all into every round of the tournament and make it worth something. Because otherwise, going 7-0, you can just basically stop from there and lose the next 2 rounds because it doesn't matter. But making every round count is an interesting concept because it's not something that we've done in the past for at least the national level. And you want to reward those people, but then again, it does hurt when you go into the second day and you're X-2 and you really don't have as much room for error but you couldn't have really done an X-4 cut because if we had made it X-2 in the second day, we would have 21 people based on what happened here at nationals, and that's just way too many people to end up cutting.
Yeah, I
so
agree with that.
It's tough to find the perfect solution in a tournament like in a situation like this because with Swiss, with 2 days of Swiss, it's hard to find what is the best system that benefits everyone.
I think the difference here really is that there was championship points on the line compared to Worlds, where the last 2 years we've seen once you get that X-2, once you reach that point where you're guaranteed to make day 2, they withdraw you from the tournament. Here, since there's points on the line, like they needed to keep the records going for whatever reason they decided way back in the beginning of the season. But I want to speak to the point of really rewarding players for, doing well the first day. Because think about it, when you're a 7-2 player, right? You're happy you made cut, but then to advance farther, you have to go at minimum 4-1 to advance at that stage. And, that's kind of, that's reasonable to expect on day 2. You want your players to be doing extremely well. But look at it on the flip side. The one player who is 9-0 can't afford to go 2-3, have a losing record on the second day, and still make it into cut. So yes, it rewards them, but it's kind of weird what they're looking for on that second day from that player. Their expectations.
That's a good point. Like, you actually saw that example, not to pick on Nils, I believe, is that how you say his name? Nils Dunlop?
Mm-hmm.
Not to pick on him, but he did go 2-3 on the second day and still managed to make cut just because he had that 9-0 start. And while a 9-0 is nothing to laugh at, that's a strong day 1. It's hard to justify going 2-3 in the second day and making cut versus those people who might have gone 3-2 and just not made it. Or I don't know. That's only 1 win versus 1 more loss, but it's weird to think about, that people like in Collin's situation, they have to push hard for that 4-1 to make it in versus Nils can make it in with just a 2-3.
I believe that happened at Australia too with the champion actually. I believe she went 2-3 in day 2 and then made cut and then won the tournament.
Did she go 9-0 on the first day or 8-0 and something, or?
I think she did because I remember someone telling me that she did go 2-3.
Okay.
But, yeah, so it's like it rewards them for going. I might be wrong about that. I'm not sure.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it rewards it, but then Nils didn't have the best day 2. I mean, top 8 is nothing to laugh at, but he didn't have the performance he necessarily would have wanted to. And there's also a difference between when you play someone at 8-0, you're both 8-0 and you just had an entire day of playing. There's a different mentality and mindset of when you start fresh the next day. Because if I play someone after 8 rounds of Swiss and I'm 8-0, I'm going to play a little bit differently than I do when I start after a nice, night's rest and then you play me at the next day. There's a huge mentality, how you're feeling and how you are actually playing.
And you look at the players who you are playing against. He had a very positive record on the first day versus the entire tournament. But when you look at his record versus the people who were strong enough to make it to the second day, he went negative. And so that's kind of well, you proved yourself against players of any caliber, but you didn't prove yourself against the players of the highest caliber.
I see where you're coming from. I definitely agree with it. That's my one of my issues with that records carrying over too. Because I played in 2015. That was the only other time I cut, and the records didn't carry over. and I went X and 2 on day 2. And it definitely like the players who were, I don't even know the records of the ones. Like I know Blake barely made it in a day 1 at X and 2, like on the last round, and then he ended up getting top 4 at the tournament. But he went X and 2 as well on day 2. So if this system was enacted, he wouldn't have cut.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's weird. I know some people are really for it, but I see both sides. But I personally don't really like it.
Yeah, it's tough. And also, I just want to clarify to everyone listening that I'm in no way picking on Nils. It's just, I'm mostly looking at him as like numbers, like what the like record was and like what like he ended up receiving for his record. I don't in any way mean to like pick on him for his performance. Just as a person, just more looking at it as like I said, the record, the numbers, wins and losses. So.
Yep, well said. So. I guess a neat talk about the international structure, which we'll come back to again at some point in the futures because we need to review the season as a whole at some point, and then we'll cover this subject again. But if you guys want to move on from the structure
Steven,
a little bit, what?
Yeah, I was going to say before we haven't even talked about who won.
Yeah, so if we want to move on from the structure a little bit, we can talk a little bit more about where the players actually placed and some of the Pokemon they used. So I felt like just from the spectator's perspective, I thought some of the two biggest Pokemon stories I saw were Snorlax and Metagross. So Snorlax, very happy to see it doing well at all these tournaments because I'm sure everyone knows it's my favorite Pokemon. Had a really strong showing using Curse. I don't know if, I know some of these people had Belly Drum as well, so not to scoff at that at all. And then Metagross, there was a lot of the weakness policy set, which I felt like it really does a lot all in one turn when the partner's using Bulldoze. Because first off, Metagross has Clear Body, right? So you're not lowering your own speed. It gives you chip damage on the opponent's team. It gives you speed control. And it's also going to activate your own weakness policy so you can power up, get to +2 attack. So doing 3 things all in one fell swoop is really powerful. And, Metagross really felt like this, it felt like this weird spot compared to Kartana and Celesteela in terms of steel types throughout the entire season. And we saw it do pretty well in this tournament.
Yeah. And I would say that it's interesting to see how, like you had said, we saw so many Metagross make it into the cut. And I don't even know if all of them were running specifically that weakness policy set, because I believe like the highest Metagross that we saw was like Sean's, which I believe was choice banded. And then I can't remember exactly what Nails runs on his Metagross, but I don't know if it's exactly the same kind of Bulldoze.
His was Bulldoze weakness policy, but with Buzzwole and Arcanine instead of like Salamence.
Okay, so it is the same one. So we did end up seeing it in the top 8. And then in terms of other things that are worth mentioning on the teams, Ducks still made the cut, which is kind of funny. Unfortunately, Tommy not representing it, going for that 4 for 4. But we did end up seeing Ducks still make it into the top cut internationals through Sean. And then Marcus actually using one of the teams that we saw in the top cut of Japan Nationals that we were talking about earlier. He used a team that was basically like a variation of it, but mostly a direct copy of it to great success at Nationals.
Yeah, Marcus's team, when Michael, Conan, and I saw the set on the Smeargle and the Porygon Z, because it is Fake Out Spore,
Map Block Transform.
Map Block Transform. The Map Block is the important part because I think it's definitely like a really good early round kind of like, if you aren't prepared for this, you're going to get swept by it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know, like, I even talked to Chuppa, who was at 0-1 next to me. He didn't end up making cut, but we were both at 0-1, and he was actually talking about how he lost to Porygon Z Smeargle. And I mentioned, I was like, oh, it must have been the map block stuff. And he's like, wait, is that a thing? So even like Chuppa, who's like in top 4 of championship points, didn't necessarily watch Japan Nats or look at the teams too closely to see the map block Smeargle.
Nobody really saw it coming.
Yeah, so it like caught a ton of people off guard, like especially like for the game 1 scenario. But then Marcus was able to pilot it obviously through all 3 games potentially. He did get top 8, But it definitely, like, in a game one, like, if you don't come prepared for that, you're gonna lose. And even if you know it's coming, you can still lose. I know Conan had to play Marcus in day 2, and we knew that team, like, because we were kind of afraid of it because we saw the, like, it's really hard to actually beat the Porygon Smeargle lead if you're not prepared, or, like, even if you are prepared. So Conan actually lost to it as well, just because Marcus was such a good pilot of the team. But I think that team is very, like, interesting because I know Tobias used it as well,
Mm-hmm.
but he wasn't able to cut. I just think it's a really interesting team, and I'm not sure, like, if we'll see stuff like that appear at Worlds, but I know, like, a lot of it was, like, caught a lot of people off guard, and even if you are prepared for it, it was a really solid team.
I definitely recommend to anyone who hasn't seen it, because it was on one of the side TVs, so I imagine the great majority of people that are listening to this did see it. But that set versus Conan, or Conan versus Marcus, I think is on YouTube now. Definitely a worthwhile one to watch, because I did get to watch that live, and it was very exciting. But the Smeargle Porygon Z lead often, like, it seems to remind me of like Smeargle plus Xerneas from last year, except this time Map Block works a lot better because you don't see things like Fake Out, like Roar or Whirlwind or Taunt, or things that get past Map Block that would annoy maybe like a Crafty Shield Smeargle to help a Xerneas setup or something like that, whereas Porygon Z gets this boost a lot easier because we see a lot more offensive moves where, like, people see Follow Me plus a setup move and think, oh, I can just use Skydrop with my Coco and then maybe a Z move or something like that. And those are both blocked by a Mat Block, especially coming from a Scarf Smeargle. And so it ended up being one of the probably most crucial moves on that set. Just the ability to wall off any damaging attacks. And I feel like that's most people's go-to strategy for setup strategies like Eevee or Porygon Z this year, is to just blow through it as early as possible instead of, maybe running things like Taunt or Haze or Whirlwind. And so it's interesting to see Map Block have so much success. And I think it was just a really crucial part of the team in this meta. And then something else that we have yet to talk about, and it was really the team of the tournament, in my opinion. Like, we did see a lot of Snorlax recycling and recycling and recycling. Good for Snorlax, save the planet. But Paul Chua ended up finishing second with a team that we saw a lot of players using. I believe a lot of people are calling it Snack Chomp. That's my favorite name for it, at least, because it's another acronym, but at least it's like a more common word. I don't know. It's just as ridiculous as chalk and fake PG or whatever, but I like Snack Chomp because it's just the best way, I think, to refer to it. And we saw a lot of people using teams very similar to that, either Snack Chomp or Smack Chomp with Mimikyu over Ninetales. And we saw a lot of strong players using the one that Paul Chua was using, that is Tapu Koko, Celesteela, Arcanine, Garchomp, Ninetales, and Snorlax. Like, we saw Wolf play with it on stream. We saw I believe he was playing against Leonard Kraft in a mirror match on stream using the team. And I think a lot of people were expecting to see this team going into the tournament because there were so many people running around with it. Billa was using it at the tournament. Pokey Alex had cut a regional with it a week before. It had won a regional on its own, and Toller a while back had ended up making cut with it. So it's a team that has, like, a lot of history to it. But I don't know, just around this time, people decided this was the event to bring it to, and it didn't have a huge representation on the day 2 cut, but we saw a lot of it on the stream matches.
Oh, for sure. I definitely I use this team a little bit as well, but with the Mimikyu, and it's definitely a really strong team, and it kind of feels a little chalkish in a way, like where if you outplay your opponent, you can win almost every game. But I think I know Wolf also used it in the Smogon tournament, in top 4 or in top 8 or something. And this team has been it's been around since Virginia, where Toller and Kazuki, Toller's friend, both used the same team, except Kazuki had Mimikyu. So it's been around for a while. I think they were some of the first to find success with it. I'm not sure. But it's just a really, like, kind of safe option, like, to pick. And I think, like, one of the most important things to note is that the Garchomp's almost always scarfed. because it's just all built around, I think, the Celesteela. Like, you want the Celesteela to checkmate and win the game for you. That's how most people play the team. So the Garchomp being Scarfed helps get rid of threats like Coco, Arcanine, stuff like that, as opposed to like the Ground Z set. So it's a really interesting team, and you'll never play like two that are the same because they'll just put techs in different places. Paul had Wide Guard Celesteela. Wolf had Blizzardless Ninetales. Billa had Air Slash Celesteela. So it's just, there's so much you can do with these 6 Pokemon. Like, you can move all the sets. You can move the Z moves all over the place. You could run Ground Z Garchomp and like Specs Coco, like Toller ran, or you could run Fire Z Arcanine if you wanted to. There's just so much you can do with the team, and I think that's what makes it so versatile and why we see it a lot.
I definitely think that, and while people use this way too often, I think this is a very fair team to compare to Shock from 2015, where, you know, you take some of the most solid Pokemon, and then you see the last slot get swapped around a lot, where it was like Thundurus from that year, and now you see Ninetales or Mimikyu or Slowking. You know, we saw Justin Karras run Slowking on this team to make it to the second day, and so it's really interesting. Like you said, people just kind of swap around all these moves to make it their own flavor, to make it unique, and, you know, maybe catch their opponents off guard because they seen the team, they think they know how to play it, but really they don't when they see that, you know, there are certain techs that make the matchups play differently. And so, I think it's a cool concept. I personally didn't like hate Chalk back in the day in 2015. I respected it. You know, it was a team that you just had to beat. And so this is just kind of another one of those teams where it's obviously very safe. It uses some of the best Pokemon, and why wouldn't you, you know, if you're playing to win? And so it's, just, I guess that was just kind of what we had come to at this point in the format. Is just, we found, a core that's been popular all season long, Coco, Celesteela, Arcanine, Garchomp, and then added one of the hardest to get rid of Pokemon, Snorlax. It is like a roadblock in itself, you know, if you played the games. And so, yeah, it's just kind of funny, that, this was the tournament that it really came out at. But, I guess we did see, like you had said, success, or like it popping out, up all over the season. So
I just really like how, you know, this specific team, you know, whether it's Coco Celesteela, Arcanine, Garchomp, Snorlax, plus a whatever, I really like how it always strikes some sort of fundamental VGC concept, which is hitting your floors and ceilings in terms of your speeds. So you have your really fast Pokemon in Coco, Ninetales, and Garchomp. If it's Scarfed, it's going to be even faster than it already is. And the other 3 kind of play more into the slower mode. Snorlax obviously going to be your slowest one. Celesteela's in that mid-speed tier, where you can also consider it slow enough to be, you know, it's defensive enough to stall out Trick Room. So it lets you play around against some of those other teams. And then Arcanine is just Arcanine, which is really good in this format. And he can play both in and out of Trick Room, especially with extreme speed and just fantastic Pokemon. But I like how it strikes some fundamental VGC team building, and it's also just really using strong Pokemon in this format. So not surprised to be seeing it have success recently.
that's a funny concept that you bring up there, because I remember talking to my friend about it over the course of the weekend. He was using a very hard Trick Room team, that I ended up building, the Lucario one. And so he referred to it as a speed sandwich when you're facing against like a Coco and a Snorlax. And it's like, well, I can't set up Trick Room because there's a Snorlax across from me. But then Coco just gets to do whatever it wants because it's the fastest Pokemon in the field. And so you're really just kind of sandwiched in between these two Pokemon. And so that's why Coco and Snorlax in their own way like synergize well together, because they have such varying speeds and you can control the board from both sides of the spectrum.
I think that's especially important this year because speed control is really lacking for most teams, and this team has most of the time has, if you're using the Ninetales version, you're relying on kind of Icy Wind as speed control from a Ninetales, so it's not always the most reliable, especially it's not like a Trick Room or something, but the speeds are so varied on the team that you can always like kind of position yourself in a way where your Pokemon are faster regardless. If Trick Room's up, if you potentially get Icy Wind, you can still manipulate the game in your way, in your favor. That's why I personally didn't like it, because the speed control is lacking. Obviously, if you have Mimikyu and stuff, that changes a little bit, because now you have the Mimikyu Snorlax version, so you have like this like really scary Trick Room option. But like the one Paul used had just Icy Wind, so you definitely have to play really smart around your speed tiers. but obviously you can pull it off as Paul's shown.
And it does have that inadvertent speed control with Garchomp, holding the choice scarf, as well as rock sliding, because that's its own form of speed control, right?
Yeah.
If your opponents can't attack, that's speed control, right?
You call it that, sure. But there are obviously a lot of great matches in the top cut here. But let's talk about finals here. Obviously, I'm sure it was an exciting match to anticipate before it had happened. Australia versus US, the third straight time in that tournament for VGC. You would hope the US would pull out a win there, but let's talk about finals a little bit. I remember seeing Game 3. Paul was up 4-2, and I was wondering to myself, how the heck is he going to lose this? And just a crazy match for Christopher Kahn. Is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah, Kahn.
Christopher Kahn, huge, just really incredible performance to pull that back and pull out that victory.
It was really cool that his brother was also able to win in, I think, the juniors division. So just a crazy weekend for that family to be able to win nationals together, which is a really cool storyline on its own, aside from the fact that America got swept by Australia. But the finals match was really nail-biting and crazy. It was very back and forth, where we saw, I think, Paul won the first game. And
other way.
It was the other way? Okay, so Paul lost.
Yeah, because I think that was the one he crit his himself.
Oh, no, yes, yeah. And then he ended up bringing back the second game, and so I was like, it's so perfect that we're going for Game 3 at the national finals. And I think the big kind of story of that Game 3 was Snorlax just prevailing and recycling no matter what was thrown at it. It ended up getting paralyzed by Tapu Koko, as well as Garchomp just launching rock slides endlessly, and it did not flinch in the face of danger and just kept recycling. So it was really crazy to watch, and you felt like the odds were against Chris. I actually don't know the math on it, but just getting the recycle off so many times in a row was so crazy to watch it. And it's one of those things where I felt like a lot of people in the crowd were not on Team Paul, not on Team Chris, but on Team Chaos. They just wanted to see hacks happen because it's exciting, because you're like, oh my gosh, like this guy just got flinched 4 times in a row or something like that. It's just rooting for the RNG and just to see the craziest things happen. And so I think it was a hilarious match to watch. There was also, I think, a freeze that ended up helping Paul winning Game 2, I think. And so just overall a really ridiculous set that I really loved and enjoyed watching live.
I personally think like Game 3, I believe Christopher either lost a Pokemon really early or Paul got lucky against something. But I know Christopher was forced to Toxic Paul's Facade Snorlax. And that's kind of how he lost Game 2 as well, because like Snorlax was just doing too much damage with the base 140 normal move. And in Game 3, he was forced to do it again. And he just positioned himself well enough that the Facade Snorlax wasn't able to actually like win the game for Paul straight up, like it did kind of like with the help of a freeze in Game 2. Because I was like, why did he do that? He's just going to power up the Snorlax, but he kind of had to so he could actually deal with it. So that was like the thing that I remember the most, and of course the rock slide avoiding flinches.
Right. I mean, I think the only other thing I can say about the finals is it was very exciting one to watch. Definitely. Luck is just part of the game, so both players had to make the best of whatever situations they were in and play those out as best as they could. And it was just really great to see these players go to a Game 3. Really strong performances from both of them. And I hadn't even realized that Christopher Kahn was a previous world champion from the senior division in the trading card game, of all things, which is, that's crazy to think about, that this is one really skilled player in both of Pokemon's games here. I guess they also have Pokemon Tournament now, so.
Is he Australian Sajin?
Well, he'd have to win Worlds too, I guess.
Well, you said, he won Worlds in TCG. In the seniors division.
Backwards. He's backwards, Sajin.
Exactly.
Now he has to.
It's because he's from down under.
Yeah.
Gosh. But Australia takes the sweep for this international in all three divisions. And I think I also saw that out of all the internationals, across all divisions, so I think they won 6 out of the 12 total titles. So that's also something kind of nuts to think about. Makes them look really good heading into Worlds, just in general. Like, they've been performing really well, winning events. We'll see if they can take it all later in August.
One thing that I do want to mention briefly that was kind of funny is I believe there was a big tournament in Japan. I think it was Battle Road Gloria. And they had basically the same finalist teams that we ended up seeing in the senior division finals at North American Internationals. There was one mon difference where a Garchomp was swapped for a Pheromosa, which ended up being a pretty crucial part of the team. But we saw Scarf Silvally taking on, I think it was Fake PG with Togedemaru. It was literally the same matchup, which was just such a funny and weird coincidence. But really cool. And I think one of my favorite moments from the stream was when the senior international champion got on stream and for his interview, and he was like, what went well in that battle? And he said Togedemaru was on point. And, I was a big fan because I'm a big Togedemaru fan. And, just throwing out those little memes, it made me smile seeing that Togedemaru ended up winning the national, even if it was only in the seniors division.
That matchup actually played in the complete opposite way. In Battle Road Gloria, the Silvally guy actually stomped DJ, who was the Togedemaru guy.
Yeah,
it wasn't even close. So props to him for changing changing a little bit of the matchup. And I don't think Pheromosa, this Pheromosa Garchomp change, I don't think he brought Garchomp against DJ. So, but he did opt to bring Pheromosa, which was a good choice because she did destroy that team.
Pheromosa was very influential.
Yeah, it was a interesting set, but the Australian senior played really well. So did the Australian junior. He impressed me a lot.
Oh, that was just unfair, honestly. He was playing like a master. I think we all felt that way. We were just okay, we can't even make these plays. What is this kid doing down there?
Yeah, he was definitely, he showed up, and so did the senior as well. He made the plays he needed to.
He was well trained, obviously, by the international champion for North America. So definitely had, I'm sure some great brother training there. I think that's really cool. Just really cool concept that they not only were 3 Australians able to win, but 2 of them being related, and just the number of Australians in the tournament being so low, and then they all end up winning is just a crazy storyline.
So I think on the note of that storyline, we're going to have to end our story here today and finish up this episode. So we hope you've enjoyed the coverage of these tournaments. Obviously, we're going to be talking about Indy for the next few times we do the show. And obviously, leading up into Worlds, there's a lot to talk about there. We have information on the world structure, on the Anaheim Open, which we did not get to talk about here, but we'll get to that in the future. But that'll do it for this show. Thank you so much to Collin Heier for being on with us today.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
And obviously, congratulations to you on obtaining your invite at this final event. And we'll be seeing both you and Alex at Worlds. Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely am really excited to go to Anaheim.
And yeah, you'll see me there. I'll put my all into it.
Nice. So, other than that, you can find the show on iTunes. Leave us a review there. You can also send us an email to vgchypervoice@gmail.com. Send us some feedback. Send us your questions. We'd love to talk about what you'd like to hear about on the show. And the other thing is, we're also all on Twitter. Collin, where can people follow you?
I believe I'm I'm at Battle Room.
Just Battle Room, no the?
No, I removed the.
Okay, so at Battle Room.
At Battle Room, yeah.
Got it. And Alex, where can people follow you?
I am at Lexicon VGC. Steven, if people did want to follow you, they would find you at...
I am at Super Morioka. Thank you so much for listening to the show. We hope you've enjoyed it. And stay tuned for more.